In the vast, endless reaches of space, where countless civilizations had risen and fallen, one name had become a whispered legend. It was a name few truly believed, but many had heard: the humans. To most species, they were just stories, myths, passed down through generations of a brave and mysterious people who had vanished without a trace. Yet their tales lived on in the hearts of those who dared to dream. They were the ones who were said to have defied the impossible, who had waged wars against unthinkable odds and won. In the mighty Zalan Empire, a race of proud and powerful beings, humans were a distant myth. To the Zalan, who had controlled the galaxy for centuries, the very thought of another species challenging their rule seemed absurd. They believed they were the most advanced, the most powerful civilization in existence. They had seen countless species rise and fall, and yet the legend of humanity persisted, carried from one star system to the next, filling their imaginations with wonder and skepticism alike. Rilke, a young cadet in the Imperial fleet, had always heard the stories. As a child, her elders would tell her tales of these mythical beings, humans who had once roamed the stars, conquering planets and overcoming impossible odds. She had never truly believed them. It wasn't that she doubted the stories. There was something about the way they were told that felt real. It was the idea that these humans were more than just creatures. They were legends, symbols of what could be achieved when one's will was unbreakable. But Rilke was no child anymore. She had grown up hearing these stories, but now she was a cadet, a part of the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever known. That morning, as Rilke stood before her commanding officer, she was distracted by the swirling thoughts of ancient legends. Captain Zorak, the fleet commander, stood before her, reviewing the orders for the day. He was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp features and a reputation that made even the bravest Zalan officers pause in his presence. "We are to patrol the outer reaches today," Captain Zorak announced, his deep voice filling the room. "This is standard protocol. Stay sharp. Our sensors are picking up something unusual near the sector. No one knows what it is yet, but we're going to find out." Rilke nodded, her mind still not fully on the mission. The Zalan fleet had been in control of this galaxy for thousands of years. The borders of their empire stretched far and wide, and no species had dared challenge them. But still, there was something that gnawed at her, a feeling that today might be different. The fleet had been sent to the farthest reaches of the empire to investigate a strange signal emanating from the edge of known space. It wasn't a distress call, but it wasn't anything they had ever seen before either. A strange frequency, one that couldn't be traced to any known species, had been detected. It was odd, too odd to ignore. Rilke had always been good at her duties. She had passed every test with flying colors, but there was something about the unknown that made her nervous. And so, as her ship, the Vigilance, moved through the cold blackness of space, Rilke found herself staring out at the stars, wondering if the legends were true. Could these humans, if they even existed, still be out there? Could they be waiting? And if they were, what would happen when they met? Hours passed without incident. The stars looked the same as they always had: silent, cold, unyielding. The Vigilance glided through the emptiness, its sleek hull barely making a sound as it traversed the void. Rilke stood at her post, her eyes scanning the sensor readouts. The rest of the crew seemed relaxed, but Rilke couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, without warning, the sensors pinged. A small blip, just a blip, on the radar. It was a tiny anomaly, just a ripple in the vastness of space, but it was there. And it was different. "Captain," Rilke said, her voice steady but laced with curiosity, "we've got something. It's small, but it's definitely not a normal signal." Captain Zorak turned sharply, his expression unreadable. "What do you mean, not normal?" "I don't know, sir," Rilke admitted. "It's a new type of frequency. Something organic, almost. It's not a ship, but it's definitely there." The captain's brow furrowed. "We'll check it." "Out. Keep your eyes on it, cadet. Everyone get to your stations." The Vigilance changed course, heading toward the anomaly. As the ship advanced, Rilke could feel her heart beat faster. Her instincts told her that something important was about to unfold. They arrived at the source of the signal an hour later. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a station. It was a small, seemingly insignificant piece of debris, a derelict object, drifting in space. But it wasn't just any piece of debris. There was a symbol on it, one that sent a shiver down Rilke's spine. The symbol was simple, an intricate design that looked almost like a stylized human figure, holding an outstretched hand, a symbol Rilke had seen in the old legends, a symbol that, until now, she had believed to be nothing more than a myth. "We've found something," she whispered under her breath, almost as if she were afraid to say it out loud. Captain Zorak walked over, his sharp eyes studying the object. His voice was grim as he spoke. "Get a closer look. This is important." Rilke activated the ship's sensors, focusing on the object. As the Vigilance approached, the object became clearer. It was small, only a few meters in diameter, and it looked ancient, like it had been drifting for centuries. But the symbol was unmistakable. "It's human," Rilke said, her voice tinged with awe. This is a human artifact." Captain Zorak's eyes widened. "Impossible. The humans vanished long ago." "We thought they vanished," Rilke said quietly, the truth sinking in. The crew gathered around and the captain issued commands to bring the object aboard. Rilke watched as the artifact was pulled into the docking bay, her mind racing. The stories she had heard as a child, the legends that had always seemed so far-fetched, were suddenly real. The humans, they were out there, and they had left something behind. As the crew began to study the artifact, a transmission suddenly flickered on their communications screen. It was a message, a simple message that filled Rilke with both fear and wonder. The object, a relic from a time long past, was now aboard the Vigilance. Its mysterious symbol had left the crew restless, with everyone eager to learn more. Rilke, still grappling with the implications of the discovery, found herself standing. In the central observation room, her eyes fixed on the artifact as it sat on a pedestal. It was small, weathered, but undeniably human. Captain Zorak, having ordered the object to be moved into the secure lab for study, was pacing. His usually confident demeanor had been replaced with a rare sense of uncertainty. Despite his years of experience, there was something about this situation that he couldn't quite place. His sharp eyes constantly darted toward Rilke, who seemed as unsettled as he was. "We've always been in control of the galaxy," Zorak muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "We've never faced anything like this." Rilke turned toward him. What if the legends were true?" she asked softly. "What if humans never really left, and we just lost track of them?" Zorak stopped in his tracks, his gaze locking with hers. His expression hardened. "That's a dangerous thought, Cadet. There are too many stories, too many variables. The Zaylin Empire has no equals. We cannot allow ourselves to be distracted by myths." Rilke wanted to argue, to insist that the stories were more than just tales. But she bit her tongue, knowing that the captain would not entertain such ideas. Instead, she returned to her station, her mind racing. The transmission they had received earlier, the simple but chilling message from the humans, played on repeat in her mind. "We come in peace, but do not test us." The message haunted her. What did it mean? Why had the humans vanished in the first place? And how had their artifact ended up here, in the farthest reaches of the galaxy? The questions piled up like an avalanche, each one more urgent than the last. Then, without warning, the communication system crackled to life. The crew had not been expecting any contact, especially not after the strange transmission they had already received. A flicker on the screen appeared, and the image of a human ship filled the display. Its design was unlike any Rilke had ever seen, sleek, with no visible weapons or thrusters, and a hauntingly smooth surface that seemed to shimmer in the dark, void of space. Captain Zorak froze, his eyes widening. "That's impossible," he whispered. "The humans, they've never been seen outside their home world." The ship on the screen was unlike anything the Zalin had ever encountered. No weapons, no shields, not even a conventional hull design. It was almost too perfect. And yet, it was real. The figure that appeared on the screen next only made Rilke's heart skip a beat. The human appeared calm and composed, with sharp eyes that betrayed no fear. His features were soft yet commanding, and his voice, when it came through, was clear and resonant. "I am Captain Vega," the human said, his words cutting through the tension that filled the room. "We have received your transmission. We know you have found our artifact." Rilke's mouth went dry. "You've been listening?" Vega smiled slightly. "Yes. We've been listening for a long time. We know you've been searching for answers, and we believe the time has come for you to have them." The transmission screen flickered again as Vega's voice grew more serious. "We are humans. We have not vanished as your myths suggest, but we are not here to fight. We seek peace. We have learned over time that cooperation and understanding are stronger than conflict." Rilke's mind raced. She had heard rumors, whispers, among the Zalin military that the humans had once been a powerful species capable of incredible feats. But this message, it didn't match the stories of war and conquest she had grown up with. Instead, the calm assurance in Vega's voice felt more like a warning than a greeting. Zorak's voice cut through the silence. "What do you want, human? You've been silent for centuries, and now suddenly you appear in our territory. We've already dealt with one of your artifacts. Do you think we'll just welcome you with open arms?" Captain Vega's expression remained calm. "We don't expect you to welcome us, Captain Zorak. We merely wish to explain, to offer a chance at peace." Zorak's eyes narrowed. "And why should we believe you?" "Because," Vega replied, his voice steady, "we have no reason to deceive you. You found our artifact, and now we are revealing ourselves to you. We could have remained hidden, but we chose not to. The galaxy has changed, Captain. You can no longer dominate it the way you once did." The words struck like a blow. Rilke could see the muscles in Zorak's jaw tense. The Zalin Empire had built its power on dominance, on being the ultimate force in the galaxy. To hear someone, especially a human, speak as if that was no longer true was both shocking and unsettling. "What do you mean by that?" Zorak growled, his voice suddenly harsh. Captain Vega's eyes held a quiet strength. "The galaxy is bigger than the Zalin Empire, and there are forces within it that you have not encountered yet. We come in peace, but we are not powerless. Your empire is vast, yes, but we have seen far more than you realize. We've learned, we've grown, and we've come to offer you a chance to join us before things get much worse." "Worse?" Rilke asked, her voice trembling with a mix of curiosity and fear. "What do you mean by that?" Vega's gaze softened as he looked directly at her. "The galaxy is at a crossroads. There are new players emerging, some of them older than even the Zalin. Some who seek only destruction. We need all the help we can get. That's why we're here, to offer you the opportunity to be part of something bigger than your empire, a chance to rise above the old ways of war and conquest." Rilke's heart beat faster. She had always believed the Zalin Empire was invincible, No one could challenge them, not in the way the humans seemed to suggest. But now, the message was clear. The universe was changing, and the Zaylen could either adapt or they could fall. "Why now?" Zorak asked, his voice low. "Why reveal yourselves after all this time?" Vega smiled again, though it was tinged with something Rilke couldn't quite place. "Because the time is right. We have watched and waited. The galaxy is ripe for change, and the Zaylen need to understand that you are not alone. Your actions have consequences, and so do ours. But together, we can make a difference." Rilke felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The humans weren't just legends, they were real. And they were offering something that seemed impossible. Peace, cooperation, unity. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the crew of the Vigilance in stunned silence. No one spoke for several moments as the weight of what had just been said sank in. Finally, Zorak spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "Prepare the fleet. We will meet them." Rilke stood in the shadows, her mind racing with thoughts of what this could mean. Could the humans really be as powerful as they seemed? What had they learned during their centuries of silence? And most importantly, what role would the Zaylen play in the future of the galaxy? One thing was clear. The old stories of humans, the ones Rilke had heard as a child, were only the beginning. The true story was just starting to unfold. The next few days aboard the Vigilance were filled with tension. Captain Zorak's orders were clear. The fleet would prepare for a confrontation. There was no room for doubt. The Zaylen Empire had never backed down from a challenge, especially one that threatened their dominance. Yet as Rilke walked the ship's corridors, she could feel the shift in the air. Even the veteran officers seemed to be carrying a weight they hadn't felt before. The human fleet was approaching. Rilke couldn't help but wonder what that would mean for the Zaylen Empire. She had heard the stories, the legends of human resilience, of their ability to overcome seemingly impossible odds, but seeing it firsthand was another matter entirely. These humans didn't come with the arrogance of conquerors. Instead, they came with something even more dangerous: confidence, tempered by wisdom. They were not here to fight, but they were more than capable of doing so if pushed. Captain Vega's message had shaken her. "We have no reason to deceive you," he had said, "but we are not powerless." Rilke's mind kept returning to those words. She had no idea what kind of power the humans wielded, but she knew one thing for certain. The Zaylen Empire was not invincible. The galaxy had changed, and whether they liked it or not, the Zaylen would have to adapt. The idea of peace with the humans, however, was still something Zorak couldn't accept. He had spent his entire life building the Empire's strength, and the thought of it being questioned was too much to bear. Rilke stood at her post on the bridge, gazing at the stars. The silence was thick, each passing moment growing heavier than the last. The fleet was readying itself for the worst, but Rilke could feel that something inside her had shifted. The human fleet was not what the Zaylen expected. It didn't look like a military armada, nor did it have the intimidating presence of a conqueror's fleet. The ships were sleek, smooth, and minimalist. There were no signs of weaponry, at least not visible. "Cadet, status report," Captain Zorak called, his voice sharp as usual, though there was a hint of something else in it now: uncertainty. Rilke quickly turned her attention to the control panels. "The human fleet has arrived. They're positioned just outside the outer edge of our sector, beyond our range of fire. They're waiting for us to make the first move." Zorak frowned. "I want full communication. Let them know that they are intruding into Zaylen space. We will not tolerate any more games." His voice was cold, his mind made up. The idea of diplomacy was a far-off concept he wasn't ready to embrace. He needed action. Rilke hesitated, glancing. at the view screen where the human fleet loomed, waiting in the cold expanse of space. "Captain, they haven't made any aggressive moves. I don't care what you think, cadet," Zorak snapped. "Prepare the fleet. We're not here to make friends." Rilke swallowed her frustration and relayed the orders. She couldn't shake the feeling that Zorak's pride was getting in the way of something far more important. These humans weren't like any of the other species the Zaylan had dealt with. They weren't here for conquest. They were here to prove something, to show the galaxy that they had something worth offering. But Captain Zorak wasn't seeing it. Minutes later, the Vigilance was at the front of the Zaylan fleet, and the communication channels buzzed to life again. This time, it wasn't the humans who initiated the contact. The Zaylan fleet broadcast their message to the approaching ships. "This is Captain Zorak of the Zaylan Imperial Fleet." Zorak's voice boomed across the communication system. "You have entered Zaylan space without permission. We demand that you leave immediately or face the consequences." There was a brief silence. Then, Captain Vega's calm voice filled the bridge once more. "Captain Zorak," Vega began, his tone unchanged. "We are not here to fight. We simply wish to speak. We have been watching your empire for some time, and we believe that now is the time for a change." Zorak's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just stroll into our sector and dictate terms? We don't take kindly to threats, human." Vega's voice remained steady. "This is not a threat, Captain. This is an opportunity. An opportunity to join us, to evolve beyond the old ways of war and domination. You've seen the destruction that comes with it, haven't you? The endless cycles of conflict, the constant fighting. It's time to put an end to it." Rilke could feel the tension in the room rise. She was sure Zorak's anger was nearing its breaking point. The idea of peace, of giving up control, was anathema to everything he stood for. "We don't need your opportunity," Zorak growled, his voice rising. "We are the Zaylan. We've conquered more systems than you could ever imagine. We are the greatest force in the galaxy, and we will not bow to you." Rilke held her breath, waiting for the inevitable. But Vega's response was calm, almost too calm. "We're not asking you to bow to us, Captain. We're asking you to see the bigger picture. The galaxy is changing, and the Zaylan Empire can be a part of that change. Or you can continue down the path of destruction and self-doubt. The choice is yours." There was a long pause before Zorak spoke again, his voice thick with anger. "Enough of your empty words. Prepare to engage." Rilke's heart sank. She had hoped for something different, something that could lead to peace. But Zorak's pride had clouded his judgment. The Zaylan were about to make a grave mistake. Without further warning, the Zaylan fleet opened fire. The human ships did not retaliate immediately. Instead, their movements were precise and deliberate, as if they had anticipated the attack. In a swift motion, the human ships dodged the incoming fire, their sleek hulls moving with an agility that the Zaylan could not match. The Vigilance's sensors registered no damage from the attack, but it was clear that the humans were toying with them. As the battle raged on, Rilke couldn't help but notice how the human fleet moved, almost as if they were in perfect harmony with each other. They didn't need to exchange words, yet their ships coordinated effortlessly. It was a terrifying display of discipline and unity, something that the Zaylan fleet could never replicate. The Zaylan, in their arrogance, had underestimated the humans. They were not here to fight a war. They had come to prove something else. Entirely. That peace, once achieved, could be stronger than any weapon. The humans were not going to engage in an endless battle. They didn't need to. Rilke's mind raced as she watched the unfolding battle. She could see it now. Zorak's pride had led them to this point. The Zaylan, for all their might, had been blindsided by something far more powerful than strength, the ability to control a situation, to move beyond the need for destruction. She turned to Captain Zorak, her voice barely a whisper. Losing. The humans? I know, Zorak replied, his voice thick with frustration. But we can still win. They can't beat us. Not in the end. The battle between the Zalan Empire and the human fleet had shifted in unexpected ways. The Zalan, with all their might, had been unable to land a significant blow on the human ships. Each time they fired, the humans dodged or neutralized their attacks with unsettling precision. It wasn't a battle of weapons, but of strategy, and the humans were winning. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Captain Zorak stood frozen, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. His pride, once unwavering, had been shaken to its core. The realization was slowly sinking in. The humans were not only powerful, they were intelligent, calm, and composed in ways the Zalan had never seen before. The Zalan fleet had thrown everything they had at the humans, but the humans had done nothing more than protect themselves, showing restraint at every turn. Rilke, standing at her post, watched in disbelief. She had hoped for a peaceful resolution, but she had also feared this would happen. Zorak's arrogance and unwillingness to listen had led them down this dangerous path. The Zalan were the ones who had instigated the fight, and now it was clear that the humans were in control, not with brute force, but with careful, strategic thinking. The communication screen buzzed to life. The familiar, calm face of Captain Vega appeared on the screen once more. His voice, when it came, was as steady as it had been during their first conversation. "Captain Zorak," Vega began, his tone not condescending, but filled with a quiet strength. "This doesn't have to escalate any further. We've shown you what we can do. We don't want to fight you, but we will not be intimidated." Zorak's face twisted with rage. "You think we'll just let you walk all over us?" He spat, his voice sharp. "We are the Zalan. You may have your tricks, but we are not afraid of you." Vega's expression remained unchanged. "It's not about fear, Captain. It's about understanding. We don't want to destroy you. We want you to see the bigger picture, one where power doesn't come from war, but from unity. There's a place for the Zalan in this galaxy, but you have to be willing to accept that you're not the only ones who matter." The words stung, and Rilke could see the effect they were having on Zorak. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he seemed at a loss for words. The Zalan Empire had always been the center of their universe. To hear that they were not the only ones who mattered was a challenge to everything he had fought for. Everything he had believed. "What do you want from us?" Zorak growled, his voice lowering in anger. "We want peace," Vega answered simply. "We want cooperation. We want to show you that there's a better way to exist in this galaxy. Together we can accomplish things beyond what either of us could do alone." Zorak's eyes narrowed. "And why would we trust you? You've shown us nothing but power." Vega's gaze softened. "Power is not our goal. Our power comes from our ability to unite, to inspire, to lead by example. You, too, can have that kind of power if you let go of the need to dominate. It's not too late, Captain." Rilke watched as Zorak struggled internally. She could see the storm of emotions brewing behind his eyes, pride, anger, and something else she couldn't quite place. For the first time since they had encountered the humans, she saw something different in him. Hesitation. The human fleet had taken no more aggressive actions, even as the Zalan continued to fire. The humans had every reason to retaliate, yet they didn't. Instead, they used their superior agility and technology to disable the Zalan ships without causing permanent damage. It was a demonstration of control, of restraint, that the Zalan were not accustomed to. It was as if the humans were showing them the difference between raw power and true strength. Zorak turned his back to the screen, pacing as he tried to gather his thoughts. "If we do this," he said, his voice quieter now, "what happens to the Zalan Empire? We've spent centuries building this. Everything we are, everything we've fought for, has been for the Empire's glory. What do you expect us to give up?" Vega's voice came through the speakers once more, calm and patient. I'm not asking you to give up your identity. I'm asking you to evolve. The galaxy is changing. The old ways, the ways of war and dominance are fading. The future belongs to those who can adapt, who can grow and learn. You don't have to lose your place in the galaxy, Captain. But you have to be willing to accept that others like us have their place too. Zorak stopped pacing. His back was turned to the screen, but Rilke could see the tension in his posture. The battle had not gone as he had planned. The humans had been a challenge unlike anything he had faced before. He had expected a simple victory, but now, the cost of that victory seemed unclear, and the humans weren't asking for war. They were asking for understanding. Rilke could see the change happening in Zorak's heart. He was a proud leader, but even pride had its limits. The humans weren't attacking. They were offering a hand in friendship. It wasn't the kind of victory Zorak had been trained to accept, but it was a victory all the same. One that came, not from crushing their enemies, but from creating something stronger, something that could last. After a long silence, Zorak turned back to the communication screen. "What do you want from us?" he asked again, but this time, his voice held more curiosity than anger. Vega nodded as though he had been expecting this moment. "We want you to consider a new path, one of peace, cooperation, and mutual respect. We want to build a future together where both our civilizations can thrive." Zorak's face remained stoic, but Rilke could see the wheels turning in his mind. His empire, his legacy, had always been built on conquest and strength. But now, the strength of the humans, their restraint, their ability to show mercy, was starting to resonate with him. He was being asked to give up the very thing that had made the Zaylan so powerful: control. "You ask a lot," Zorak said, his voice heavy. "But I'm listening." There was a long pause before Vega spoke again. "That's all we ask, Captain. Listen, understand. The rest will follow." The message was clear. The humans were not here to force the Zaylan into submission. They were here to show them another way. And now, it was up to the Zaylan to decide whether to continue on the path of destruction or to embrace something new. As the transmission ended, Rilke stood still, her heart pounding. She had watched as the mighty Captain Zorak, the pride of the Zaylan Empire, had been brought to the edge of understanding. He wasn't there yet, but the possibility of peace, of cooperation, was now on the table. The humans had shown them what true strength looked like, and for the first time, Rilke wondered if Zorak could let go of the old ways and embrace the future. The bridge was silent as the crew processed the implications of what had just occurred. The Zaylan Empire, for all its might, had been humbled, and the humans, with their quiet wisdom, had given them a chance to change. Rilke looked out at the stars, her mind racing. The future of the galaxy was no longer as clear as it once seemed. It wasn't just about the Zaylan Empire anymore. It was about something greater, a chance for all species to find a new way forward, a way where power wasn't about domination, but about unity. The tension that had once filled the air like an unbreakable storm had now shifted, as though the wind had changed direction. Captain Zorak stood at the front of the bridge, his back straight, his gaze focused on the stars outside. The Zaylan fleet had been brought to the edge of understanding, and now, the future of their empire seemed more uncertain than ever. Rilke, standing at her post, watched her captain with a mixture of respect and curiosity. She had always seen Zorak as a symbol of unshakable strength, a leader who would never hesitate to crush anything that stood in his way. But today, the man she had admired was no longer the same. His pride, his refusal to change, had been challenged, not by force, but by the quiet, overwhelming strength of the humans. The human fleet, still stationed at the edge of Zaylan space, had shown no signs of aggression. They had withdrawn, offering only peaceful communication and restraint. The power they wielded was not in their weapons, but in their conviction. A conviction that spoke of a future where the galaxy's many civilizations could work together, not in fear, but in unity. As Rilke gazed out at the stars, she found herself wondering if the Zaylin could truly embrace this new way of thinking. Captain Vega's words had lingered in her mind. The galaxy is bigger than the Zaylin. We come in peace, but we will not be intimidated. The truth was clear now. The Zaylin Empire had been challenged, not by military might, but by the human ability to live beyond war. They were here to offer a future where cooperation outweighed conquest. It was a future that for Zorak seemed as distant and foreign as the stars themselves. But things had changed. Zorak finally spoke, his voice quieter than it had been in days. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to meet them." Rilke's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the command, but she wasn't sure what to expect. Would they meet the humans with the same arrogance they had shown before? Or had the past few days been enough to change their course? The crew moved with purpose, carrying out their captain's orders. Rilke found herself lost in thought as the Vigilance moved forward, her heart pounding in her chest. It wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a choice. The Zaylin fleet approached the human ships, their sleek forms gleaming in the dark expanse of space. The humans, as before, didn't move to engage in battle. They simply waited, silent, patient, and unmoving, like calm water that did not rise to meet the storm. Zorak stood at the helm, his face unreadable. He had been a warrior all his life, but now he was asked to be something else, to lead his people into a future that demanded cooperation, not conflict. The transmission screen flickered to life, and the calm face of Captain Vega appeared once more. He smiled when he saw Zorak's image, a slight but respectful gesture. "Captain Zorak," Vega said, his voice steady and warm. "I'm glad to see you've decided to meet us." Zorak's gaze never wavered. "I came to listen," he said simply. Vega nodded. "That's all we ask. I think you'll find that we're not so different after all. We both seek strength, but we've learned that strength comes from more than just force. It comes from trust, from understanding." Zorak's lips tightened into a thin line. "Trust is earned," he said, his tone hard, but not dismissive. "And it's not given freely." "We agree," Vega responded, "but it's the first step. We can't move forward without it." There was a long pause, and for the first time, Rilke saw a flicker of uncertainty in Zorak's eyes. The Zaylin were always confident in their strength. They had never needed to trust others, because they had been the dominant force in the galaxy. But now the situation was different. The humans weren't here to challenge them. They were here to offer something they had never considered: a partnership. Zorak took a deep breath. "Tell me then, what do you offer us humans?" Vega's smile softened. "We offer you a chance to be part of something greater than yourselves. Not just as conquerors, but as partners. A chance to lead in a way that doesn't require domination." Zorak was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching the screen as if he could see beyond Vega's calm demeanor into the heart of his words. Rilke watched her captain, unsure of where this conversation would lead. She had seen Zorak face down countless enemies, but this was different. He wasn't fighting a war. He was fighting his own beliefs. "I've led the Zaylin Empire for many years," Zorak finally said, his voice low. "I've seen what happens when we show weakness. When we trust others, we risk losing everything." Vega nodded, understanding the fear that lay behind Zorak's words. "We understand that fear. But what if trusting others could make you stronger? What if you could still be powerful without having to destroy everything around you?" Zorak looked away, his gaze drifting toward the stars outside. For a long moment he was silent, lost in thought. Rilke could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him, This was the moment that would define the future of the Zalan Empire. It wasn't about winning or losing, it was about changing. Finally, Zorak turned back to the screen. His expression had softened, though there was still a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Perhaps you're right," he said, his voice quieter now. "Perhaps there's another way." Vega's smile widened, and there was no mistaking the relief in his eyes. "We're glad to hear you say that. The future of the galaxy belongs to those who can adapt and grow, and we want you to be a part of that." For the first time, Zorak's shoulders relaxed, and he nodded slowly. "I'll agree to your terms. On one condition," he added, his voice firm again, but no longer filled with the same defiance. "The Zalan will not be subsumed into your alliance. We will be equal partners. If we are to work together, it must be as equals." Vega didn't hesitate. "Agreed. We don't seek to diminish your people, Captain. We want to build something stronger together." Rilke felt a sense of awe as she watched the exchange. She had never imagined she would see this day, when the great Captain Zorak, the symbol of the Zalan Empire's might, would step forward and embrace the possibility of peace. But there it was, a future where the Zalan and the humans could stand side by side, united in purpose. The communication screen flickered again, and a new message appeared. It was not from Captain Vega, but from the Zalan Military Command. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. "Empire Command approves the decision. The Zalan will join the alliance." The room fell silent. Rilke felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had feared that Zorak's pride would prevent this moment from happening, but it hadn't. The Zalan were about to take the first step toward a new future. As Zorak turned to face the crew, his voice was steady, but there was a new warmth in it. "We've made the right choice. We will move forward together, not as conquerors, but as allies. The galaxy will change, and we will be part of that change." Rilke smiled, her heart lifting. The stories of humans, once dismissed as nothing more than myths, had now become a reality, and in that reality, the Zalan Empire had found a new path, one that was not about domination, but about unity.